Education Commissioner Angélica Infante-Green, thank you for joining us as you do every week.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
I want to start by asking you about one of the biggest headlines from yesterday, which had to do with the latest plan for vaccine distribution in Rhode Island. Teachers had really hoped that they would get priority as sort of essential workers that are out in the world, but the state decided to go with a much more simple plan, really, that's just age, underlying conditions, and then there is going to be some acceleration in hard hit communities. Do you agree with this decision? You've been pushing hard to keep schools open, and having healthy teachers is part of that. Do you wish that teachers could have been prioritized a bit more?
Well, we've always been advocating for teachers to be front and center in terms of vaccines. However, there's a reality. The state is only receiving 14,000 vaccines a week, which means that's two doses, that's 7,000 people a week that you can, if you really think about it that way. So decisions have to be made. The good thing is, though, with phase two, it's for anyone that's 55 age or older or live in a hard hit community. It's about 58% of K to 12 teachers and staff are either fall in those categories. So that's a pretty large number for phase two. So we're excited about that. Obviously, if more vaccines become available, we will continue to make sure that we advocate for teachers being front and center.
And that's good that a large chunk of teachers are going to fall in those categories, but it's not really that encouraging for the other 42% of teachers who know that they might not get it. If you're in your 40s, your 30s, or your 20s, and you're a teacher, you might not get the vaccine now until the school year is over. If you don't
Well,
have
I
one of
don't know. We don't know that because this new administration is prioritizing that. So I think that we just have to wait and see. The moment more vaccines become available, we will expedite it. Well, not we, the Department of Health will expedite it. So I think that that's really important, especially in the hard hit areas. I think that that's where there's a lot of concern. But our data still says what it says about being in schools, but we want to make teachers a priority. I think that it's important for us, but we can't. We have to. The way that Dr. Alexander Scott has explained it to me has been, they're trying to keep people out of the hospital and people that are, at risk of really being affected in a very negative way. So that's why they have the plan that they have. But we will continue to advocate. That's part of the work that we have to do.
So
That I have to do.
are you hopeful that when Lieutenant Governor McKee actually does take over as governor, if more vaccine comes in, that teachers might be first on the list for that to be allocated to?
Well, we can hope if there are more vaccines that the only thing that's limiting right now is the number of vaccines that we are receiving. That is the challenge that the Department of Health is facing.
Speaking of Lieutenant Governor McKee, have you spoken to him about staying on with his administration?
Yes, yes. We just spoke recently, and we had a very positive conversation.
Did you ask him, do you want to stay for the remainder of the 2 years of his term? Did you ask him about that?
That if I wanted to stay?
Yeah. And assuming he wants to keep you?
Yes, we talked about that. I do want to stay. I made a commitment to Rhode Island, and we are seeing some changes, and I'm excited about that. And he, yes, would like me to stay. So I think we're looking forward to different opportunities, to continuing the work that we've started, and to see things propel forward. So I'm looking forward to the partnership.
The other day, the Senate Education Committee approved a charter moratorium bill that would put a moratorium on new or expanding charters, which would include the charter schools that were recently approved by the K-12 Council with your blessing. So it would be retroactive. What do you think of this bill?
Well, I put my concerns in writing. I don't agree, partly because I think it really affects a population that is already disenfranchised, that doesn't have other options. And I hear many things. Well, it's only for a small subset of parents that will qualify. Yeah, it's only for, right now that's what we have. Um, and also kind of this moratorium to figure out the funding. That's great. You can still figure out the funding and not deprive families of opportunities. We can do both. We just went through COVID and we did everything we said we were going to do. We didn't put a pause on things because COVID was here. So I think we have to look at it differently, because we have to think about who are the kids that are going to benefit from those. Those are kids that are still in schools, that are not performing well, and that parents don't have other opportunities, that this is it. This is it for them. And I keep getting the question, well, what about the 80% that can't get in? Well, we're working to fix the schools, but that's going to take time. It's just going to take time. So if we can have other opportunities for parents, I think that we need to do that. I think it is important to do that. And I think we have to remember, are we having conversations about kids? In my case, in Providence, I oversee the charter schools as well as the traditional public schools. They're all public schools. So my goal is for both of them to be in a good place, not one over another. That's not the case.
Would you support a bill for a moratorium if it wasn't retroactive, if the expansions and new schools that were recently approved could go through, but there was some sort of temporary moratorium in the future?
No, I don't support that. I can't support that. When you have a child going to a school, so I'm going to give you an example. The superintendent and I met with the school where the teacher said that all fifth graders were not reading at grade level. I was like, all of them? They were like, yep. I said, okay, not one or two, all of them. Have they been with you since kindergarten? Yes. So what do you say to a parent? What do you say? It's going to take us a little while to get to fix where we are. So therefore, your child that could have another opportunity, we're not going to give it to you. Why? I don't have an answer for that. I don't have an answer for that. And that is troubling to me. So no, I don't agree with the moratorium. I don't agree that charter schools are the end all be all, but it is a part of the portfolio of how we're going to get together and get better at what we're doing. And I just don't believe in depriving parents of any opportunity for their child, especially parents that can't afford to have other options.
How do you shore up the budget? And I'm going to say Providence specifically because that's the budget that the state controls now. But the money follows the child. And so the more children that they lose to charter schools, the more money is going to be lost in the budget. You have a very ambitious turnaround plan with lots of initiatives that are going to cost money. How do you handle that in the Providence school budget?
Well, we planned for it, right? So I think the problem is that when you have a charter opening, right, you take kids from here, from there. Let's make decisions where it makes sense, right? So we are working with different people to kind of look at what does the math look like? What makes sense? So we're not taking two kids from one school, another school. So how do we do this in a very consolidated manner where the impact is not felt at the district? Because I don't want kids at the district to have less than anyone else. That's not what we're trying to do here. Absolutely not. We've made a commitment to all kids, all kids. And I think that we can figure this out without a moratorium. Nobody's really sat down to do the work that we're engaged in. And we have to do the work. I have to tell you, when we worry about where our kids are going to end up, when we try to put the 12th graders in Providence into community college for 12th grade, and they did not qualify, only 1/4 of the kids qualified, and the majority of them were from classical because they didn't have 9th grade math scores. They could not score out of the 9th grade. Come on, guys. That's not a conversation about kids that we're having. This is real. This is real.
Speaking of Providence schools, it was announced this week that middle school will now get a dual language program for the first time, which I know you're a big supporter of. What's the plan here? Do you want dual language to expand to, I'm sure ideally anyone who wants it, or what are you planning to do moving forward?
So it's not just in Providence, but it is in Providence. So we wanted to expand it because we do have a dual language school in elementary school, and there was nowhere for the kids to go, and also for kids to come in. So we want to expand it. We see that the kids are doing better. Of all the schools in Providence, the dual language school is the one that saw the biggest gains. We put out funding for districts across the state that wanted to open up dual language programs to plan for a year, to plan to open up those programs. So we have 5 districts that have taken us up on the work that it takes to put together a really good, solid program. So yes, my goal would be to have dual language programs throughout the state. Why wouldn't you want your child to speak more than one language? All kids, all kids. That's a gift that we can give to our kids.
Can you do it in high school? How does that work when you're
Yes,
sort of
we can.
rotating to different classes?
Well, it depends. There are different models. So for example, I may be taking, let's just use Spanish. I'm going to take an English class, obviously, but I'm going to take a Spanish one. Or maybe I take science in Spanish and I take history in English. It depends on the makeup of the kids, how long they've been in the program, how much of the, if they're just starting out. So all those things. But we're also thinking in Providence, changing what the high schools look like. We're thinking big. We're thinking about the International Baccalaureate program. We're thinking about, expanding CTE opportunities. We're looking big. We're thinking big for our kids as we move forward.
Are these things you can do in the short term, or is this kind of like the long-term plan? Like, for example, I know that you've got a new school you're hoping to open in 2024. So there's long-term plans, but are you also looking to reimagine these schools in the short term?
Yes. So we're going to start with the middle school next year. We already are putting the plans together for the high schools for next year so that we can announce those high schools and we can start admitting kids. So we're working. We've been working now for a year and a half on this. This is not something, the Bar Foundation has been helping us as well as XQ. So these are things that have already been worked on and we're continuously working on. And we have high school students helping us and we have communities helping us. So I think it's really exciting. We're going to see major change, and some will happen right away, and some will take some time.
How are the negotiations going with the Providence Teachers Union? Any better?
I think I can say more by next week. I'd rather not talk about that right now.
Okay, but you're not. Are you close to? Have you made more progress towards getting an agreement?
We're still going back and forth. I think it's a place where we're still working on it. We're still working on it. I said before, it's been more than 300 plus hours. We're going to continue to work to get to a place where we both feel comfortable, and that's what we're doing.
I wanted to ask if you have spoken at all to President Biden's Education Secretary nominee, Miguel Cardona. Have you had a chance to speak with him at all?
Yes, I have.
Did you talk about the RICAS exams or the state assessments and whether those might still be a requirement this spring?
Yes. So my understanding is that they are. I mean, he's not officially in the job yet. He hasn't been sworn in. But yes, we feel it's very important. Everybody feels it's important. I don't want to talk for him, but it's really important. We need to know what the gap has been. Everybody talks about the learning loss, but where's the data? Like, we really need to know where we are. What I'm hoping is that we have a waiver for accountability, not for the tests. We need to know where our kids are. We really need to know where our kids are.
But you don't want it to count towards the star ratings, essentially?
Well, so that there can be a little pause on the accountability, right? Because this has been an extraordinary year, right? It's been hard, right? Like, nobody knows what this is going to look like. It may be that all our schools are at 1 star, maybe not. We don't know, so there's no way to have accountability count unless we rejigger what accountability looks like, right? We know that attendance is going to be an issue. We know that. We know that. So we have to look at it differently. Just a traditional accountability doesn't make sense at this point.
Anything else that you're hoping is going to come out of the Biden administration with a new education secretary, presumably to be confirmed soon?
Well, what I'm hoping is that he keeps Rhode Island front and center. um, I also, he's done the job, so it's really exciting to have someone that understands um, New England, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad that he understands, you know, being a chief or a commissioner, but really New England. So I'm really excited about that. And the fact that we have a relationship gives us a little different kind of access. So and he, at the end of the day, he's a really good guy. He's a good guy, smart, thinking about teachers, students, families. So I'm very hopeful.
Education Commissioner Angélica Infante-Green, thank you as always for joining us.
Thank you.